afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a very special interview edition of This Podcast is for Nerds. As you can see, your boys are coming up in the podcast world. What that means is we're actually doing homework and trying to research places to do podcasts so we have better video content. Because what we decided was we should probably do that.
Level up the game.
So today, as you know, we wanted to get more. Ooh, hey.
Oh, sorry, I had you on the wrong one.
There we go. That's fine.
Yeah,
look at that.
Much better.
My voice is so crisp.
Yeah, it is.
Good God.
Should do some
chocolatey.
ASMR.
Is this how you all hear me every day?
Yeah, dude. You should realize how lucky we are to hear that sultry voice.
Soulful as fuck.
Right?
Well, if that's the case, welcome to the 1970s. Welcome to a time in the world where creativity and brightness was brought forth to the planet. A time when we didn't know that a young bud that was planted in the earth as a nice seed would grow to be taller than Drax, taller than Groot, and taller than the references I'm making to the Avengers. Do you want to know why? Because today we have better mouse guitars in here with us. Kiefer.
Yo.
What's up?
Not a whole lot,
How
man.
tall are you, Kiefer?
I'm entirely too tall for Japan, at least. Big in Japan. I'm 6'5".
Yes.
So for those of you with the new money, just shy of 2 meters tall.
Ooh, getting imperial with us. So, welcome to This Podcast for Nerds, everybody. Thank you for our guests who come before. And if you want to come join us, be a guest, send us a message on Instagram, send us an email, check out our socials. Honestly, right now, mostly Instagram and email, just because, like, Twitter's still kind of a fire, and I don't check it.
That's true.
So.
Fair.
Yeah.
So, we're here today. Calvin as usual, myself as usual,
yeah.
And we're here. We have an awesome studio. Come check out. And we're kind of messing around with it a little bit, learning the setup, the ropes. But for Calvin, this is probably true to form for your school days.
Yes, this does feel like I went to video film school, but it was a radio school by trade, so I had to do like 6 months of radio. So this feels cool to be back at the board. And yeah. I used to have to yeah, exactly. I would have to like intro into a commercial, and then I'd have to read the commercial and then fade into a song. So feels like that again.
So realistically, we're here to talk about nerd stuff. Calvin and I started this podcast because we would have endless conversation all the time, and we said, let's make a podcast out of it. Kiefer, you and I have these exchanges all the time, and I thought you'd be a perfect guest because you're multifaceted, one, and two, you and I branch off into a million different kinds of conversations.
Yeah.
So we brought you here under your handle, Better Mouse Guitars. But this is going to spiral into probably movies, music, genres, where you started, how you got there. And guess what? Kiefer doesn't know it, but he's already signed up to do a part 2. So we can't capture everything.
Surprise! Yeah, man, super in. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Give us a little background about yourself and your company.
About myself. Engineer by training. Bunch of numbers, spreadsheets, schedules, boring shit. And needed something as a creative outlet. And I started playing bass in college. Girlfriend at the time broke up with me. Needed something to occupy my hands.
Hey-o.
Hey-o. And started playing bass, traded away some paintball gear to a friend's younger brother because we weren't playing anymore. All my buddies in high school and I had played. But then when we went to college, everybody, the diaspora of life happens.
I feel like you'd be monstrous in paintball. Yeah, you still got translation between like the octuplets and bass to like this double shot and
just like a double trigger paintball.
Yep. And so I traded away my paintball gear for my first bass and an amp. It was a shitty Epiphone P bass and a keyboard amp.
We've all done it.
Hey, I still have an Epiphone.
and you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And I kept playing through college. Got a couple of basses here and there, and got more and more into it, and just kind of stayed with it. I mean, I've never taken any lessons. It's all been self-taught, listening to tabs. I've always been interested in music, but never formally like trained for bass stuff. Like I'd taken piano lessons as a kid, but I was like, hey, this is terrible. Fuck this. Was a drummer through like middle and high school. Got more and more into it. I ordered a custom bass guitar from a guy down in North Carolina. So this was the middle of 2008. Drove down that winter to go pick it up. And of course, being the arrogant engineer that I am, when I pick it up, I'm looking at it like, well, this is kiddie shit. I can do this. And the school that I had gone to growing up was so small. Like my graduating class was 60 people. Like we had 65 in the class, but 60 walked. So small, really small.
Yeah, that means those 5 people were obviously they knew
Cousins.
Oh. Hey-o.
I mean, no, not quite. It wasn't Kentucky, so
I don't
shots
know
fired.
anything about Kentucky, honestly.
I'm going to say Oklahoma, too, just a shout out to my wife.
So the school being as small as it was, you could do band or shop and home ec. So I've actually never taken a shop course.
That was my experience. Like, I was super stoked to go to high school because of, like, watching the Wonder Years and doing driver's ed. When I got there, like, cool, do you want screen printing or band? And I was like, oh, what? And granted, I should have done screen printing because I could have made some shirts and designs. And I was relatively artistic back then, but I also didn't have the drive to, like, be interested to let people into my mind with art.
That's
so I didn't care to do that. And I was like, my parents can't pay for an instrument. I'm making a lot of noise in the house, but if I start playing an instrument, then they can't like tell me no. So I started playing bass in high school because what did I do? I was in the orchestra for 4 years, and that went into like jazz, funk, and everything else. And then like took that and just said, I'm going to play everything. Because one thing I don't like when people tell me I can't play something for a reason. Yeah. So I did mariachi, I did like ska, I did punk, I just did everything. Yeah. I was everywhere.
So were you doing stand-up bass with jazz? Awesome.
I had a 3/4 bass that we outfitted with an electric pickup.
That's so sick.
So I did a lot of like rockabilly stuff.
I wish you grew up here because the jazz school and the jazz band and community in Ann Arbor is insane, and it's really well respected. And they've had Victor Wooten come and teach the class.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. So
it was funny because like the orchestra stuff I did and the jazz stuff I did was really more Latin jazz because of my teacher.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So for me, I got really big into like Chuck Mangione. Yes, Chuck Mangione, but also like Tito Puentes and I forget the guy's name right now. Not Chuck Liddell. Maynard Ferguson. The trumpet on that guy. Chuck and him and Chick Corea.
Oh, I know Chick Corea.
Yeah. So like those guys. That's when I hear jazz. To me, that's all Latin jazz. Because like I don't like the cornet. I hate the way it sounds. Play a trumpet. I'm sorry. It sounds like you're whining to me, and I don't like that. Yeah, I don't like that from like my humans, so I definitely like it from my instruments.
Fair.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so where was I at?
Sorry, total tangent.
So your first bass was an Epiphone. What did you say it was? P?
Yeah, it was an Epiphone P bass. Okay. And so I ordered that custom guitar. And so my technical specialist from my previous job at the time had a real nice wood shop in his basement. And I said, Mike, I want to build a bass guitar. What do you think? He's like, that sounds like a great project. Let's try it out. And over the next year, we turned out the first bass. And it was based off a PV grind bass, 4-string. Ended up going fretless because I was like, I can play fretless. I can't play fretless. But it was just a little bit less complicated to do the actual build, less things to deal with on the first one. So I was like, let's see how this goes. And it was this amazing Zen thing that I could do. I can turn raw lumber into art that makes music. Like, holy shit. Like, this was really that Zen, like the yin to the yang of like the engineering work. Yeah. It gave me a creative outlet. So from there, I was kind of operating under the name of K Custom Guitars, of course, Kiefer. A couple years go by, and I had a new job. One of my coworkers, he was in a band at the time, or like a couple years back, and he was telling me about when they had recorded one of their albums. And he's like, yeah, and instead of like renting studio space like any normal person would, we decided to build a better Mousetrap, and we built a studio in a barn. And I was like, oh, build a better Mousetrap. Better Mousetrap guitars. That's got a nice ring to it.
It does.
And from there, Better Mousetrap Guitars was born. So that was the basically beginning of 2010. Okay. And I've been building since. Took a little bit of time off when I'd gotten divorced from my ex-wife. But I guess in total, I've been building for 9 years. And this beauty right here, this lefty for my cousin Aaron, actually, is number 47. So
nice.
I'm moving at about a 5 instrument per year clip, which is not bad for just a dude in a basement.
I would say not bad. And also the things you've been able to do and people you've been able to meet from those 47 basses has been pretty
Kind of
damn stout.
kind of cool.
Yeah.
It's so this is as Zach is alluding to. So I've got a couple of higher profile clients, if you will. So the first for me being from the Southeast Michigan area, growing up when I grew up. So I graduated from high school in 2001. So nu metal was absolutely monstrous at the time, and Taproot was a local band for us. So they met and formed at U of M. So in the
I didn't realize that. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
So in the
Them and Wolfpack. That's pretty incredible.
is Wolfpack also from Ann Arbor?
So they formed. They were University of Michigan students.
No
Only
kidding.
one of the members is from Michigan, but yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild.
So
I
they
worked-
come back occasionally.
I worked with a guy at Plum Market, actually, who told me he knew the guys from Taproot. And I was like, what? Okay.
Wait, it wasn't Mike DeWolf, was it?
Ooh, that name sounds familiar.
So Mike DeWolf works, or I guess worked, maybe past tense, I'm not sure anymore. He worked at Plum Market, and I had met him. Well, he was still in Taproot.
Oh, well, then maybe yes, then.
It was like,
'Cause,
this is awkward.
I worked at 3 different Plum Markets in the area when I first came to Michigan.
Oh, man.
So,
That's wild.
yeah,
He was, I guess this was before they put the one in over on Plymouth, so this would have been the one over on Maple.
that's where I worked. That was the first one I worked at. And then we're
Might
not
have
getting
been
into my Plum Market history here, but yeah, that's the one I worked at.
So Phil, the bass player for Taproot, Phil Lipscomb's just the nicest dude. And a friend of a friend texted me. He's like, hey, you want to do somebody a huge favor? Okay, sure. What do you need? He's like, Phil from Taproot needs to borrow a small bass amp. Can he borrow yours? And like all of my like sonic history from high school into college came flooding back. Like years and years later, I'm like, oh yeah, he can borrow that amp. Absolutely. Fine. And so I've built Phil 2 basses through, again, right place, right time. Aaron Bruck from Breaking Benjamin actually owns now 5 basses that I built. So he's had 4 that have been commissioned, and he ended up with one of the basses that I took to NAMM from 2020. And I'm actually in the process of building a 6th bass for him right now. And that, especially having been a fan from Breaking Benjamin since like 2003, it's still ceaselessly the coolest shit that I get to say. Yeah, I built that in that music video. Yeah, I built that bass.
That's so fucking cool. How did you guys?
So like right place, right time. So having again that kind of nu metal exposure in high school and then early college. So I got to know Breaking Benjamin and the music that they were making, again, 2003 through basically when I graduated in 2005. Kept up with their discography, and then they had broken up or kind of went on a hiatus, and due to some kind of disputes in the band, I was like, oh shit, I never got to see him. That's a bummer. A couple years go by, they settle the disputes with the previous members, and they reformed, new lineup other than Ben, because Ben's the original member and founder, and they released a new album. So at this point, I've got a pretty stable job. I'm making big kid cash, and they were rolling out these VIP packages where you could hang out with the band after the show, and I'm like, well, it's time to make it rain. So made it rain, got the All Access Pass. And so I had a business card with one of Phil's basses on the back of it, and they give us our signed posters. So I'm just the good little fan, sit down next to Aaron at a table after the show, set the poster down, and kind of position the business card just so, kind of facing him. He was talking with another fan at the time, and points like stop mid sentence and goes, "And what is this?" And in the back of my brain, it was just like, I'm in! Oh my God, it's gonna happen! So like we shot the shit for, I don't know, like an hour and a half, almost 2 hours after that show. And he's the nicest, most down-to-earth dude. So it was really cool to just talk shop, talk what he's playing, how they kind of ended up in the band, like since the Reformation. And we kind of connected on Facebook. This is the tail end of like 2015. And we were like, I wasn't even building at the time. We were building a house. So, I mean, I was still on like build hiatus, but it was like, I can build at some point. And a couple years go by, like I didn't realize like he had been following me on Facebook after we had connected and like paying attention, like building the house, doing this, that, and the other thing. And I had finished the shop in the basement in the house we built over here in Ipsy. And I wasn't working on anything. I wasn't like pumped. I wasn't excited to build.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything that had really like reignited that kind of creative energy that really pushed me into doing this in the first place. And we were going down for my birthday weekend in January of 17, and we're going to do like some bar hopping. There's a bunch of great breweries in Cleveland that my wife and I love. And she was just my girlfriend at the time. And like she was going to take care of the concert tickets. So I assumed we were going to get GA for the Breaking Benjamin show down there at the House of Blues. And so she surprises me with the VIP package again. So it's like she gives me this birthday card. She's like, "You're the best. You deserve the best. So we've got VIP again for tonight." And I'm like, "Oh my God." So like
that was the moment you're like, "I'm putting a ring on it."
We're gonna do this shit. So like the night before I had messaged Aaron. I'm like, "Hey dude, like we're in town for the show. Let me know if you want to grab a bite or something before the show." And it was just radio silence. I was like, "Oh damn. Well, there's that." Next morning, get the birthday card. Oh my God, VIP again. So her message him like, "Hey, girlfriend surprised me with VIP, so we will see you tonight." And he replied, "Hey man, sounds good. We'll see you there." And I had a Taproot t-shirt on when we rocked up to the show. And I did the obligatory pre-concert selfie. And Phil from Taproot had seen the Taproot t-shirt and the pre-concert selfie. Their Breaking Benjamin's tour manager was Taproot's old tour manager. So Phil texted him. He's like, "Hey, find the tall bald guy in the Taproot and like take care of him." So out of nowhere, we're already queued up. We're through security. We've got all that stuff done. And a dude walks up to us who we don't know at this point, and he's like, "We're going to swap out your wristbands and we'll talk about this later." And my wife, or girlfriend at the time, looked at me like I drop kicked a puppy. She's like, "What did you do?" And I'm like, "What do you mean? I didn't do anything. I've been standing next to you this whole time." So we go through and we're doing the whole like pre-concert thing. And the VIP experience that she had bought us was basically show up, get early access. You get to go tour the stage. So you get to look at everybody's equipment. You get to take a picture with the band again. And as we're like walking up to go get our picture taken with the band, Aaron's talking me up to Jason, their lead guitar player. He's like, "Oh yeah, this is Matt. He builds basses for Phil from Taproot." I'm like, "What the fuck is going on? This is so weird." And Susan's looking at me like, "How did you do this? Like, what happened here?" So we get up and I'm like, I'm fangirling so hard. And just shake the hands of all the guys, take the pictures. We're doing the stage tour, and she goes over to the guy that had like come up with the wristband. She's like, "Hey, it's his birthday. Can we like watch like the whole show from the stage? Like, because the part of the VIP experience, you get to watch a couple of the songs from the stage." He's like, You guys are taken care of. Don't worry about it." And we're like, "What does that even mean?" So we're getting ready to file off the stage with the rest of the band, or with the rest of the fans, as the band is walking back to basically the green room. And Aaron stops. He's like, "You guys hang out. We got some things to talk about." And I'm like, "What the fuck is going on?" So he drops on me. He's like, "Yeah, man, I've just been following you since we connected that first time on Facebook, waiting for you to start building again so I could ask you to build me a bass." And like after I peeled my jaw up off the floor with a spatula, like, okay, I'm not going to be able to focus for the rest of this night. So we watched the whole show from the stage. It was just the coolest shit. And like their crew, everybody in the band, they're just the nicest guys. And they're always just so welcoming and just friendly, and just always good to see those guys. But that was kind of how things got kicked off. And I did not sleep that night because I was running through. I had been accruing materials for literally years. So like a problem that luthiers have. So Luthier, a builder of stringed instruments, we just buy materials. We're like, "Oh, that piece of flame maple is really pretty. We should probably buy that. Oh,
I don't know when I'll use it.
Look at this ebony fretboard. It's perfectly like streaky, or it's perfectly jet black. It's like, oh yeah, I gotta have this. Oh, what about this too?" So I just had the stock of material that was sitting in my basement. So I'm running through like the Rolodex of material that I've got. Like, oh, I could use this. Oh my god, oh, I could use this. So like, didn't sleep that night. We're in Cleveland. The next morning, we haul ass home. And I ran downstairs. We didn't do anything else. Like unpacking, doing laundry, like normal adult shit. Go down and start laying out stuff. And I'm like, "Suze, I need you down here. I need the female aesthetic." So she comes down. She's like, "This is good. Don't show him this. Just what about this one? And what about this piece of thing here? Why don't we do this?" I'm like, yes, this sounds great. So I had like 4 different basically like color chips of materials that I had gotten together. I'm like, I think these are good. What do you think? She's like, yeah, they're fine. Just
They're fine.
take the fucking picture and just send it to him. Would you stop? She's like, you have fangirled so hard for the last 24 hours. I can't stand you anymore. So send him an email. I'm like, hey man, here's the kind of materials that I think would be really great for your first kind of stab at things. And he had picked 2, and his wife, Kara, who is also the world's biggest sweetheart, picked 2. And like one of the ones they had in common, we ended up doing that for the first build. And so that was the tail end of January 17. I hadn't built a bass or any instruments in like 3 years.
Oh, wow.
So it was a real long hiatus. So I had to like relearn a lot.
Yeah.
And I turned around an instrument, actually the fastest I've ever turned one around. So I turned it around in 2 months and was ready like to rock and roll. I was like, all right, when can I deliver this? And I was just like, oh, you guys are on tour right now, huh? Shit. So tour rolls around and they ended up over at 20 Monroe Live in Grand Rapids, which is a really awesome venue. Small,
it's amazing.
Great audio. The green rooms are spectacular.
Are they?
It's funny now. Like I can contextualize things like, oh yeah, backstage here is awesome. Backstage here, there's no room. It kind of sucks. We're gonna camp out on the tour bus. So I ended up at 20 Monroe Live for the show, and like we show up and it's pouring, just pissing down rain, and it's the middle of May. And we run up to the doors as we've used like the covered walkway to get from our hotel to 20 Monroe Live. We're banging on the door, and like the merch guy answers the door. He's like, yeah? We're like, we have a bass player in. Oh my God. He's like, oh good, we've been expecting you. Like, oh shit. So, and to see his reaction, like when he opened that thing for the first time, and it was just like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. Just the coolest shit. And when he played that over the house, like PA for the first time, like I cried like a little girl with a skin knee. Just, oh my God, this is happening. I can't believe it.
It's everything I've ever dreamed of.
It was, but it's just been, and like after he played it, like back in the green room, he had about 10 seconds with it in his hands. He's like, I'm going to need another one of these.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, that I can do. So actually somebody pointed out the other day, he is going to end up receiving an instrument a year for the last like 6 years. So
wow.
So with this 6th one, that'll be his 6th in 6 years, which is just, I can't believe that like this is something that I get to say that I get to do. And that's like when I had changed jobs at the tail end of 2021, it was a really big stepping off point for me because my wife was like, I will support you in whatever you want to do. So if you want to go do this, I will support you. Like that is your jam. But if you decide you want to do that, you got to do it. Like you're not taking any breaks. Like you are working 8 hours a day and you're going to do this. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that sounds great for like 30 seconds. Then you realize like that's taxing. And then you realize, oh shit, I love this because I get to do it, not because I have to do it. So ultimately I'm still working for the man, but like this is still my creative outlet that I have that I get to do on the weekends and in the evenings that just really fulfills that kind of creative void. And like as Zach mentioned earlier, like all the people that I've been able to meet, like the bands that I've been able to see, like the places backstage that I've been able to be like, oh my God, holy shit. Like when I delivered the 3rd bass, this is like my favorite like delivery story out of all of them. This was the last year for Rock on the Range before it became Sonic Temple. Yeah. And I was like, hey, I'm planning on delivering it for Rock on the Range. Does that work for you? He's like, yeah, that sounds good. Like we'll figure it out. So taking a look at all the policies and procedures for Rock on the Range, and in big bold print, like towards the end, it's like no instruments allowed. It's like, oh, well, that's going to be prohibitive to get that in here. Yeah. So I messaged him. I'm like, hey man, this is policies and procedures for the venue. Like, how do you want to handle this? He's like, give me like 2 days. I'll get back with you. All right, cool. A couple days later, he pings me. He's like, all right, I have a solution. I'm like, all right, hit me. What do we got? He's like, you and Suze can bring the instrument to this hotel, and then you can ride with us on the tour bus to the venue. And I'm like, on the tour bus to Rock on the Range. That? He's like, yeah, So just like passing these throngs of people as we're rolling in, like, man, this is the wildest shit. But like hanging out backstage, we get to meet the guys from 10 years. Those guys are all the nicest dudes. Billy Howardell from A Perfect Circle walked by us, and Aaron's like, be cool. And I'm like, I can't. Like Maynard was somewhere. He just kind of like slunk in and slunk out, because that's just kind of how he does, it seems. But like it was, man, it's just the coolest shit. Like this whole like progression of things, and it's still wild because it's like I get to do this, and all this actually happened. Like, holy shit, just wild.
I think it's one of the things too, because I when briefly you and I worked together, and it's funny because I heard about you more from your energy and how you handle and tackle projects before I'd even known you as a person. I think it was about a month when I heard your name, and then everyone tell me how awesome you were before I actually met you.
Yeah.
And the minute I met you, I remember we had that kind of like Spider-Man in the hallway thing. We were just like, whoa. And then like you did something, and I was like, wait, we started just showing tattoos, like not stripping in the office, but damn near like, what do you got? Like, what's going on? And then like somehow it became like the whole, oh, you play bass? I make bass. It's like, oh my God. Then you showed me a picture. I was like, oh my God, you made this.
Are we going to be best friends?
Yes. And then the whole concept you mentioned too about like having a creative outlet for, when you need to, you're still a creative person, but you're in a technical role, and it requires you can show some creativity, but it still is kind of limiting in how you can do it. And that's kind of like when Calvin and I started the podcast was for that reason also.
Yeah.
And it was funny because we started like 1 month before the pandemic hit?
Oh, man.
We got one episode in, and then like it was like, hey, what's up? You're staying home. And I was like, wow, okay. But I remember too, you and I talking about having that creative outlet. And, me saying that I'm actually really excited to finish with school.
Yeah.
Because right now my second job is school. And while I have sprinkled in more ways to be creative, like doing like the drone photography, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get to the point where I can go do more dedicated time towards that.
Yep.
And it's just very exciting. So you're like a role model for that because you're doing it.
Yeah. No, for sure. I talk about that with my wife all the time because I took up a bunch of hobbies during COVID, like you, and she's like always pushing me to like make it a job, and I'm like, but I think it'll ruin it. Like if it's like my income, like it's not gonna be fun. This isn't why I do it. It's relaxing.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's baking, but like, yeah, she was like, you could open a bakery. I'm like, yeah, I mean that might be cool, but like, what if it fails and then this hobby's kind of like ruined, right? It's like, it's the thing that's like taken everything from me. So yeah, I really respect that. It's super cool that you've made this like it's kind of a job, but it's like really it's your passion, and it's that's so cool.
I love that you did it too. Like you took the engineering approach, you took the things you learned as a professional to make your hobby more enjoyable.
Yeah.
And not even like, I feel like you talked about fangirling out. I know for a fact you get just as giddy showing us, your friends, these pictures as you would the people that are delivering stuff to. And that's like, you fangirl over us. I'm like, you showed me something with the cherry, the one you're working on now with like that blue, I forgot what it's called, but that's like the blue brocade against the light tan background.
Yep.
You and I were both just like, I remember getting a text from you at work, and I was like, oh, this is going to be hot. This is going to be fantastic. This is, what is this? Like, I was like, at first I thought it was stone.
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell is this?
I see bright blue. What is this? Yeah. That one, like, that's actually the 6th for Aaron. And that's my first foray into fooling with like epoxies. So that was another one of those, like, in theory, like I've got the engineering mindset. I'm like, all right, I know this should work in theory. I've seen other builders do something that's been similar, but it's just the actual, like where the rubber meets the road, like doing it for yourself for that first time. And this was like a really reaffirming, like, all right, all of the research that I did panned out perfectly, and it just worked. Like it was just like, yes, this is great. Because it's not always like that, where it's just like, all right, I think this is how I can do this, like whatever, like the composition of this as far as like materials, or how I can make this cut, or how I can make like this glue joint here, make sure everything works out just right. Sometimes it works out, sometimes not so much. Like that was one of the times where it was just like, okay, good, glad this one worked out. It's like, that's the like rough or difficult part about like prototyping these things sometimes is like materials can be real expensive. So I mean to prototype something, especially if I'm doing like a full, like, all right, I want to see how the full body looks. Like if the top alone is like $400, like materials, time, etc. I mean, that's a big expenditure. So like I've tried to really lean on that engineering like background for all right, how much can I mitigate or how much can I prevent, understand, and really hone before I like do something that's going to be permanent.
Right.
It's one of those like, oh shit kind of moments, because like when I was pouring the epoxy out like on this $400 Buckeye top, and I'm like, well, I hope this all goes. Here we go.
So how have the last few years impacted that? Because I know just like from like I just bought a house, like the lumber costs are insane. Not as bad now, but like has that really impacted your ability to get stuff, or is it not as much?
It's not been, I would say a lot of the more exotic things are, the less the prices have fluctuated, which actually kind of surprised me because I had anticipated because of supply chain, because of this, that, the other thing, everything, because it was literally a global pandemic and these materials are coming from everywhere.
Right.
I was expecting to be really hit on this, but it didn't end up being too terrible from like a lot of the exotics. So like the ebony that I used on this fretboard here for this one, like that basically hasn't moved much more than I would say like 5, maybe 10% up.
Wow.
The local domestics got a little bit more expensive. Again, I think it's manpower and then it's the logistics for getting things. But where we've really been hit in kind of this environment is electronics. So, I mean, it's not only like the preamp, but like the pickups. So all these rare earth elements that go into the magnets for these pickups, like the supplier's base cost just skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And then just like top to bottom, like it's just made things more expensive.
So we're going to apologize if you guys can hear this weird tapping noise in the back, like someone's hammering. We're not sure where that comes from.
Sounds like a snare drum.
It does. I was like, did I press a button that like started like a drum loop or something? That was very weird. Sorry.
No worries. But yeah, like the electronics have been, I think, where we've been pinched the most. So like the raw materials, so electronics, and then the hardware. I use Hipshot hardware almost exclusively for all the tuners, the bridges. There's a very rare exception that I will use anything like but them, because they have taken, like, Jason and everybody over there at Hipshot are the nicest folks. They just make great product. Always have taken care of me. Even like before I like had this business, I was just literally starting out like, I want to build instruments. Would you sell me parts cheap? And they're like, sure.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So where does your lumber, where does that usually source from?
So I've got a lot of vendors that I've gone through kind of throughout the years. The bulk of stuff, if I'm getting it locally for like the domestics, so like I call it domestics, but stuff that's not like super exotic, I'll go to Armstrong Millworks, and they're up in Highland, Michigan. Great family-owned business. They've taken care of Sean, my mentor in building. Shout out to May Custom Bases. Sean rocks. He's mentored me through all this building process. We share ideas constantly. And honestly, without that kind of mentoring and creative energy, I don't think I'd be nearly as successful as I've been. But he introduced me to Armstrong Millworks. So I'll get like as much as I can get from them, I will, because they've always taken great care of me.
Yeah.
Woodcraft over in Canton, Gilmer Lumber out in Oregon, actually, especially for like the ebony fretboards, they're very consistent. They measure things well. The pictures are always just perfectly on.
Yeah.
And kind of the last shout out, Todd over at Secret Stash Hardwoods. You can check him out on Instagram as well. He's been just a resource for anything and everything exotics. So actually, I think the zebra wood for the headless over here came from him. So
we're gonna get some B-roll of us like all handling, holding, messing around with the bases, and then like I'll edit it so we can put everyone's name in there so everyone gets properly credited for everything.
Yeah,
really we go. Really big on that. Really big on like supporting local business, but also supporting like anyone. Like that's what we talked about too before. My big fun thing, my thing I get to enjoy with my job and my career is networking.
Yep.
being able to say, hear someone say, oh, man, I wish I could do X, Y, Z. And someone go, man, I wish I knew someone who could do X, Y, Z. And be like, hey, how, by the way, I'm the chocolate glue in the middle that makes this dessert work.
I have a guy.
Zach has a guy for everything, and I respect that about him.
That's fair. That's actually kind of true.
Yeah.
I was like, no, that's not true. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So we're going to address this real quick.
I think there's like another...
Yeah, this is a new studio we're working with, and it's like cool because you can do different spaces, but it's also a recording studio overall. So if you hear drum noises and snare or like drum practice and music, just pretend it's our backing track.
Yeah.
Until we figure out how to get around that. So.
It's keeping us going.
Just squelch it out in the background.
I literally thought someone was hammering outside for a second. I was like, wait, what is this noise? And you'll see us like looking around going, periodically, what's
the
going on?
confused cat look though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we were talking about how costs. So it sounds like you haven't been impacted too much other than the electronics,
yep.
That is interesting to me too. I figured lumber certainly would have, especially with the exotic stuff, because you're not using like a standard piece of lumber, right?
No,
I mean, this is very specialized, and
typically, yeah. I mean, like I'll go for like a very specific, like typically like the composition of a guitar. Like this is something that's been hotly debated for decades and decades. Like people will be like, "Oh, this is a rosewood fretboard. I know it." Like, well, did you see it recorded with a rosewood fretboard? Like, was it from a specific Fender, whatever vintage that only was made with rosewood fretboards? If that's the case, then sure, maybe that had a rosewood fretboard. Yeah. But like when it comes to like solid body instruments, it's basically the flip flop from an acoustic instrument. So an acoustic instrument, it is, I would say, 80% material, and the rest is the player. It's the player and environment. Yeah. So that's really like deciding the tone of an acoustic instrument. On the electric side of things, it's almost completely flipped, where it's like 85% is dictated by the electronics. Mm-hmm. I would say the materials kind of color the sound, but it doesn't dictate purely like this guitar is going to sound like this if it has an ebony fretboard. That's generally speaking kind of bullshit, but I mean, it will alter the sound slightly. So for the most part, like when I'm picking materials, like I pick it because of the aesthetics for it. Like it's like, this looks good with this. And that's like from an artistic and like kind of composition standpoint, that's what I geek out on. It's just like, when I see my peers, other builders, high-end boutique, like well-respected shops that are turning stuff out like $10, $12, $15,000 a pop, wow, which is way the shit more than I'm charging. Like when I see like them do really unique, cool things with either stains, dyes, or even just pairing materials up, like that's kind of like what I also geek out on. Is just like seeing what my peers are doing and seeing like what else is there in the market. Like what else? Oh shit, I can use that. Oh yeah, I know I've seen this on this guitar from this guy. Oh yeah, this is really cool. Look at this. And that's kind of like what Sean and I, like through the years, have geek out on. It's just like using new combinations, because I mean, there's so many different ways that you can use like maple, walnut, and mahogany. Like, right. There have been a lot of my guitars that are basically those three materials as the core. And then it'll be an ebony fretboard or a rosewood fretboard. So, it gets a little bit boring. So like having like the variety and being able to branch out and like having these access to like Secret Stash, Armstrong, Woodcraft, all of these great resources that we have, especially here in Michigan, like it makes it a lot easier to do really cool shit. Whereas if you were down, I don't know, Southwest or like down in Florida or something, you might not have the access or just the network of kind of the support that like I've been lucky enough to have here, which has been really cool.
Is there like a forum or a community page where like luthiers get together and discuss like techniques and stuff like that? Like how do you just meet these people through your connections and stuff like that in person? Or
it really ends up being now I think COVID has shifted things a little bit. So before there was a Detroit Luthiers Guild that I'm guessing is still around. I went to like one meetup, and this is probably 10 years ago now. So it's been a while. And like it was a bunch of acoustic builders, and then Sean and myself came in with our like basically like erector set guitars compared to what these guys are doing. It's just like, I can make a straight glue joint. Like acoustic builders are head and shoulders above anything that I'm doing as far as like solid body stuff is concerned. So it was cool because we got to see some of their composition and like, oh, I use this material or this is how I glued this together. And I mean, the process to build an acoustic instrument is so much more involved than doing an electric instrument as well. So it was like kind of a diversion point there. But I think with COVID, everybody was just kind of doing their own shit back at their own houses. So watching like what people were turning out, like when we'll see somebody like actually Rick Link over at Beardley Guitars or Beardley Instruments, I can't remember. We'll figure it out. Actually pinged me the other day. So I do, there's a little detail on the pickup pockets. So where I put a 1/8 inch round over on the inside of the pickup pockets as it goes down into the body. And it's just a little flourish that makes it just look a little bit smoother, a little bit more like done up. But it's one of those things where it's like you see it and it's not this hard 90-degree like point right next to the pickup. So it's like, oh, that's soft edge. Like, that's a really nice touch. So he reached out and he was like, hey man, like I saw that you're like doing this round over. Would it be cool like if I did that on my instrument? So I mean, a lot of it is like, and the Luthier community is so supportive. There's a couple of jerk offs out there. I'm not going to name names.
Every group.
I was going to ask.
Exactly. and like people in the Luthier community, you know who I'm talking about. Like, generally speaking, though, we love to share ideas. We love to share, like, this is how I did this, or this is how I got this color. This is how I glued these things together. This is how I made this joint here. Or how did you wire up these 3 pickups? Because, like, oh, I only do 2 and I'll do like a volume and blend. So how did you do this with these 3 pickups? Like, how do you deal with that? So, like, that's being a part of this Luthier community has been like amazing, like a gift that kind of keeps on giving because of all these new people that I've gotten to meet and all of these new things that we've gotten to learn from each other. Because I mean, Sean and I, we bounce ideas back and forth. I would say if we do it once a week, it's probably 10 times a week. You're like, hey, what about this? Or what about the, like this kind of layout with like this thickness here? Or like, how did you do this? Or like, can you come over and help me drill these damn holes? Cause this sucks. But yeah, it's the whole community, like by and large, has been so constructive and in helping us learn just as a group. And that's been really cool to kind of have that like virtual support network kind of through things.
I always feel like that's one thing that, you know, I try to do, especially, you know, we just came past the new year, so happy new year, everybody. Also, if we didn't say it last episode, with people coming to the gym, because people always say, you know, like, oh, I feel like I can't go, or I feel like I don't know anything. And I said, honestly, when I first started out, I would just wait for someone who wasn't working out, who had the build or the ability or the thing that I wanted, and said, hey, do you mind telling me how to do that? And like 95% of the time, they'd be super down and super stoked to give me tips. That other 5%, honestly, I grouped them all into one area. They'd be like, oh, yeah, you want to try some pills in the locker room? No. Whoa. Or like, oh, you can never do that. Like, you know, you're going to find that. So like, for anyone listening, if you have a passion or something you're interested about, knew about, don't know anything about, reach out and ask. Yeah. Don't feel bad if that 1-5% group kicks you back. It's in off-roading, it's in lifting, it's in everything.
It's
like
everywhere.
I don't know anything about starting a podcast, and I came to Calvin. I was like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, and I feel like I learn from him every other week, and I feel bad because sometimes I like miss a timer or a deadline that like I said, oh yeah, I'll launch this thing at like noon, and then I realize that, you know, coming home from work, it's 5.
It's 5.
Like, oh my God, what happened here? So like, Calvin's like been super gracious to be like, hey, there's this thing you can do where you can auto things to come out and use it for, you know, just get things recorded.
I love automating, dude. ADHD, you gotta automate your life a little bit.
The funny part about it last time too is that like you sent that to me to automate, and I was like, cool. I also didn't build the clips. So,
so it doesn't matter.
I literally sat on the couch like, okay, cool. Music time. Just we're doing this.
Just cranking it out.
Again, getting better at process. So again, this is not to be educational for anyone, but again, if you're ever nervous, you ever like don't know, want to start something new, chase a passion, whatever, people are more likely down to help you.
Yep.
You know,
just ask.
Yeah.
And that's like you might find that like 1 or 2 asshole quotient here and there. What? It makes it quick because if they're like, oh, no, I can't tell you how to do that. All right, well, go fuck yourself then.
Yeah, exactly.
And honestly, reach out to us. We probably know somebody who can help you out with that.
Absolutely. The network. Build the network.
Exactly. Well, I think that's like the fun thing about mastering something is like being able to share that knowledge with people. So like, why would you want to be restrictive and not?
Absolutely.
Like, that's huge.
Yeah. And that's I think kind of been the coolest thing. And like we celebrate each other's successes too. Like even if it's somebody that I'm like, God, I hate what his compositions look like. Or like, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he did this again with this instrument. But like we're still like super like, at least I try to be just like super appreciative of like where everybody's coming from, because everybody's gone through their own thing to get to where we're at. Like there's no sense in cutting people down on like doing their shit. Like, fuck yeah, you got an instrument on stage? Who cares if it was in a high school gymnasium? It's cool. You got an instrument on stage. That's badass.
Yeah. Just the starting point to get to that point is hard. Like,
yeah.
You shouldn't undercut anything that like, you're starting like your first bass, like you still had to get that first going.
Yep.
You still had to go, oh no, I just ruined $1,000 in materials. I don't know how much you actually have ruined. I'm sure that you've racked up a nice sum total.
And I'm sure you'd be annoyed by some of the design decisions in your first bass, but like, it's part of the growth process, right?
Absolutely. And that's one of those things is that's maybe one of the cool things that we as luthiers or at least what I try to do is just like, if you flub something, just recontour it or sand it up. It's gonna be fine. Like that's the cool thing about working with stuff like this. And that's maybe the other part of the reason like people are like, whoa, why don't you stain or like dye things or like do a sprayed finish? And it's just like, because I can't do that shit myself. Like, I literally don't have the facility. So if I have to entrust that to somebody else, like I have to really know what they're bringing to the table. I have to know their process. I have to know like what is the timing for this. I mean, like if the instrument's delayed, like chances are it's me. Like, sorry, like shit got busy. And that's one of the things. Like when I'm like basically writing up the proposal, like this is what I'm going to build for you. This is how much it is going to cost. This is about how long it's going to take. I don't know if it's going to take this long. I don't know if it's going to take shorter. I don't know if it's going to take longer. But like I will be as upfront with you as possible because this isn't my day job. Like I want to make sure that everybody that I'm engaged with, everybody that is a customer for me, has a positive experience here. And whether it's like really working down and making sure that they understand like what they're buying or what I'm providing for them, like I want to go as slow as it needs to be. And if that means exchanging 75 emails to get just the bill of materials down, that's fine. Because like I've been burned. I don't know if it's like burned because burned isn't the right word, but I got pinched once I built an instrument for this customer. They were super excited, delivered the instrument. A couple weeks later, he's like, hey man, like, hey dude, what's going on? It's like, well, the instrument doesn't sound like I was thinking it was going to sound like. Oh shit! What's going on? Oh, I was thinking it was going to sound like a jazz bass, and this was like a 35-inch scale, single cut, dual ceramic bar magnets. So like functionally about as far removed from a jazz bass as you can get, like tonally. And again, 85% is dictated by the electronics.
Right.
So like I can put jazz pickups in this, but I mean with ABC, like it might never sound exactly like a jazz bass. But what I ended up doing with this customer, like I bought the bass back and actually had a parts bass, a parts jazz bass that I was working on for myself. And I just traded him cash and the bass because he wanted a jazz bass. I can give him a jazz bass. I had the ability to do that. I had to come up with a bunch of cash out of pocket. Wasn't really excited about that, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
But again, in the end, like it made that customer happy. And luckily I was able to get that original bass to another customer, who shout out Will DeYoung over at Spectre Guitars. Super good dude. Will ended up buying that one from me, and it was just it just worked out. And again, I think it's knowing who you're building for, knowing and then getting them engaged on like knowing what you're building them, and just making sure that everybody's happy in the end.
Yeah, and that's knowing your audience and having your own standards too is super important. I think, especially like it's not just like you said, this isn't your actual job. This is your side gig that you enjoy doing, and if you enjoy it, you want to continue to enjoy it. So you want to make sure that like, who you're bringing along is worth the effort and time to do it.
Yeah, and we so there's like my brother does his own thing. He wrenches on cars, but we have what we call the. Are we rocking out?
This is a full, yeah. Okay.
Are we in full garage band mode now?
Yeah.
Okay, so again, welcome everybody. We have our first backing track to this. We're gonna have to like hold the basses and try and play along with what they're doing, so that way we can just like kind of follow along like an ERP roll. I was trying to figure out if we're gonna be like showing us playing basses, what music to put over it while we're doing it. It can't be anything that sounds like we're playing it, because I don't want Polyphia getting mad that we use one of their songs over. Let's like.
Tim's a sweet boy. He,
you know what? Honestly, I watched them reacting to their 2021 fans like submissions. I love like how stoked they get for watching them.
They were so pumped and like so appreciative. Like I mean, like, and they were going it up like at the beginning, like going in like, oh, let's see what this looks like, and they were all just like, oh no, this was absolutely amazing. I'm like. That actually was really amazing.
Yeah,
yes.
The guy doing the acapella was incredible.
Yeah.
That was so funny.
Right?
Yeah.
Even Tim's comment at the end, he's like, I think we have the most talented fans, you know. And I liked that band more. I think it was either actually you or our buddy Matt who introduced me to them. And, you know, I love them more from how they just, like, were stoked. Like, there was one where a guy who was covering Playing God, I think, and he did a drum fill that was different than how they do it.
Yeah.
And the guy's like, hey, he made it his own. That's awesome. Yeah. And I was like, that's how I just appreciate that. Like, there's no reason to gatekeep. There's no reason to be all, like, whatever, you know? So, like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah, if you hear music, we'll have to, like, honestly, find a way to, like...
Trying to gauge what sound they are.
Through?
Oh, I mean, you can definitely hear it in the...
Okay. Yeah, you can definitely hear it.
We'll have to be more selective of our recording times going forward.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. This was all on me.
No, this is not on you. They need better sound isolation in these rooms, I guess.
Yeah.
They sound good, though.
The funny part is, we can actually talk to them after, like, hey, you guys want to come be on a podcast?
You guys want to jam?
Yeah.
We can get some music. We can hire them for some music, some backing music, and then just
there we go.
Yeah,
B-roll in and out.
The network, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
There we go.
Okay, so I have a question. If somebody can't buy custom built bass guitar, or whatever, what is a company right now that's doing really good builds, in your opinion?
Man, that's a really tough question. I do know that a lot of larger companies have really eaten into their like years of good cred as of late. I've been really impressed with still the stuff that Ibanez is turning out.
Great
like,
guitars.
So when I was lucky enough, John Moody over at GHS Strings was able to like help me get into NAMM in 2020. So that's the National Association of Music Merchants, for those of you playing the home game. And it was before COVID. It was the biggest like sound and audio everything like get together in the country. They had Winter NAMM in LA, and they had Summer NAMM in Nashville, and I got to go to the Winter NAMM in LA, and it was. Like, I was a kid in a fucking candy store. Like, we were across from the Ibanez booth. We were next to Ernie Ball.
Ooh, God, those basses are so good.
And, like, the stuff that Ibanez had there, like, they had a bunch of, like, really cool, like, multi-scale headless stuff. It was like, what is this? Like, that is a wild-looking instrument. But, I mean, I've been a fan of Ibanez stuff for years.
I saved up to get an SDGR in high school after getting the P bass from Fender.
Yep.
And I was like, everyone I'm playing with in these bands has SDGRs, and I want a 5-string SDGR, and I'm doing this. And I remember bringing it home, and it even had like the dragon arches, so it was like cut out, and I was like, this is I'm finally a metalhead.
Yes, absolutely. And like I still I love that what they do, like they've stayed in touch with what is en vogue and have put in the R&D like where it's counted. I think that's been really cool. So to see like the multi-scale stuff that they've been doing, that's kind of one of the newer things that's kind of come into like the mainstream music. So to see them bringing out multi-scale, and it seems like it's done well. Of course, I mean, everything that they do is basically CNC driven now. So it's a little bit different for me where I'm using templates to do everything. But to see their build quality, and I mean, this goes back even years. Some when I was in college, I mean, I had an Ibanez bass that I had like ordered, and I mean, I think it took like 6 months to come in, and it was like a kid on Christmas Day when that shit got delivered. They're like, "This is Peeler Music. Your Ibanez bass is there." I'm like, "Oh shit, it's on!" But I think their attention to detail, their quality, I think they're still making great instruments. So I mean, I think entry level, you can go far worse than going with Ibanez for an electric instrument. Yamaha on the acoustic front, if you're looking for an inexpensive acoustic guitar, Ibanez makes some okay ones, but the Yamaha like entry level stuff is just chef's kiss.
I will say I also had 2 Ibanez acoustic electric basses, and I swear by those. Like they put up with me playing them, and they transitioning from a 3/4 upright bass to an acoustic electric was different,
to say the least.
Yeah, I had a fretted and a fretless acoustic electric.
Oh, nice.
So it was easier. Funny enough, eventually you couldn't play fretless. Learning to have to play fretless because of it was easier for me to go to a fretless on a smaller scale than it was for me to play fretted, because I could slide into notes versus like getting that little ting off of the fret guards. It's like, wait, what is that? Like, how am I can't really, it took me more effort to get harmonics and like land perfectly. Yeah. That's why I suck at like Rock Band. Because Rock Band, I can know the song and like play into it and like hit the notes, as opposed to that once you be precise and perfect. I'm like, I like to play live, so
Cool.
You got quiet.
Yeah.
So we have 3 people who play bass in this room right now.
Yeah.
Calvin, we didn't get very much into like your history of bass and actually musical role. We know you for like what you do, your background in movies, but like what's your musical connection with why bass and things like that?
Why bass? Because I wasn't good enough to play lead guitar in the band I wanted to play. So like we'll put you on bass.
My fingers are just too big for it, I'm not gonna lie. Yeah. I can play a Spanish acoustic guitar with half nylon, half steel, but you get me really close to trying to just do. Look,
getting way up in the neck.
What camera can this?
That one, yeah.
This doesn't work for me. I'm sorry.
No, I was in a few bands in middle school and high school, mostly like metal or just doing like rock covers and stuff like that. And so now I just kind of noodle around. I play Hagstrom Viking guitar, and my bass is an Epiphone Thunderbird.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's fun to play around with. So I'm not doing much now. I play drums on occasion with a couple of friends, but yeah, not much right now.
I'm curious to see like if the studio, if you're still hearing the music,
they definitely can hear it.
Okay, well they're hearing the music, but
100%.
I want to know too if like we do a podcast again and if the instruments are already in there. And we just film a podcast of us just messing around trying to remember how to play music again.
Just record an album, just like improv in a whole 60-minute album.
I am super down to do that.
I mean, we can probably, I feel like with the musical aptitude, I think between the 3 of us, we could hack through some Green Day songs without trying.
Oh, that's true.
Like that would be something that would be totally doable.
Yeah, it's like 4 chords.
Would be amusing as hell to watch us try to hack through that.
4A, 4C, 4D, 4E.
That's like all their music.
Yep. Yeah, 3 chords. Done.
And add some chugs in there.
So, a little bit of palm mute.
Talking about like materials and build real quick. You mentioned like different people saying, "Oh, I know the sound from this, I know the sound from that," because of resonation to electric and whatever, probably garbage.
Yep.
One thing that made me laugh is because I remember when I had the Fender P bass, and I was really influenced by Korn.
Yep.
And I was like, cool, I have EADG. I want to run bead instead.
Yep.
So I did and didn't realize that it was actually warping my neck.
Yeah.
So with that, what did you do, or what did you kind of like look into as far as like knowing how to research materials that will be compatible with the tension you're putting on?
So that's actually, like Aaron actually has put me through my paces with the kind of requirements, if you will, that he's got. So he plays Ernie Ball strings, and he plays the absolute heaviest gauge strings that he can get. So his 5-string set is a 5135. So they're like power cables.
Yeah. And
for his 4-string, he just 8/6 is the top string on the 5-string set and just basically makes it a bead bass.
Yeah.
So luckily I've in working this out, a lot of what I do is like laminations. So that's kind of the art of kind of what I do and what some of my peers have done.
You got some bases going there.
Here we go. Yeah. Sorry. Jesus. Fucking up over here.
Yeah. That wasn't very quiet. I could hear you.
Yeah, I know. I was just realizing what time it is.
We're having too much fun. That's why we had to have a part 2.
That's right.
We didn't even get into movies. We didn't get into gaming. We didn't get into like...
Yeah, I heard you're into movies, so I would love to talk movies.
My brain is just IMDb on random.
Wait, have you watched, and are you a fan of the Knives Out movies?
I just watched Glass Onion the other day.
We did just last night.
You did?
It, yeah.
Maybe part 2 you come on because we're reviewing Knives Out, the new one.
Oh, I'm so in.
Okay, yeah. Let's make that happen.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah.
Okay, where was it? Oh, lamination and preventing necks from going. So design language is one of the other things that Sean and I realized that we've each developed our own kind of unique design language over time. So when I look at like the laminations, like how they are constructed, how they are laid out, like with the thicknesses and everything and how they're glued, like I can recognize one of Sean's instruments like immediately.
Oh wow.
And like Sean has a like of course, because I've learned from him, a lot of my aesthetic really kind of gravitates from a lot of the things that he had done. So seeing like the stuff that he had done either from a material or just like a layout standpoint, where it's like, all right, I got a real thick layer next to a real thin layer, or you get an accent or like a flip-flop kind of color line, things along those lines. So the cool thing about doing all these laminations is because all the grain ends up sitting just a little bit different. So you say that you mentioned your P base, trying to make that a bead base, basically. That's a piece of wood with a weak-ass one-way truss rod. So with these bases here, so like for example, so I'm doing an 8-string fan fret headless guitar, which is 8 shades of crazy. And that has a 13-piece neck. So I put a truss rod in that thing, and I honestly don't anticipate even needing the truss rod to be able to add the right amount of back bow. But if I were to go with something that was more simplistic, so I'll throw the dual action truss rod so I can get both directions worth of correction, but I'll also use carbon fiber rods to, again, further kind of stiffen things up. So if it was like a less laminated neck, so it was like a 5-piece or a 7-piece versus kind of that 13 end of things, needs maybe a little bit more reinforcement on things. But again, it really depends on kind of what the customer is looking for too. But like Aaron, like with these crazy heavy gauge strings, like that is a ton of tension on the instruments, even with the single cut, with like the way that the wing joins the neck further up. That stabilizes things quite a bit, but it's still like that's a ton of tension on there. So,
absolutely. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for answering that. I got the wrap-up signal here because you're having too much fun. But as you can see right now, we're going to have a part 2 and possibly, honestly, a part 3 with Kiefer because we're going to want to bring him on for Glass Onion. We're going to talk about God of War, games, music. Kiefer actually sent out a thing for a couple weeks in our group chat about like, here's a scene, find the movie, and you get like it's the
website, right?
Framed.
Yeah, I love Framed. It's so much fun.
And that's why he's coming back for part 3. So please stick around for that. We're gonna throw up all of our socials. We're gonna try and we're not gonna try. We're definitely gonna get everyone credited for that Kiefer brought on. Support local businesses, get into music, follow your passion, find a new way to party. This has been This Podcast is for Nerds. Come hang out with us. Have a good one, everybody.
See ya.
See ya.
And now for my next number, I'd like to return to the classics.